What's up, guys and gals of the movement world? This is Sean Mishka, the Movement Miyagi, coming to you once again on behalf of Football Beyond the Stats and our Movement Play of the Week. This week for week two of the 2025 National Football League season. And I feel like I have deja vu here. We're going to get into James Cook yet again for what it is that he's doing. And there's a number of different reasons for that. Of course, there are plenty of worthy candidates that we could lean in on, really dissect and unpack how they're solving movement problems on the field. Guys like Bijan Robinson, guys like Lamar Jackson, guys like Jalen Warren, some offensive skill players who really showed out here in week two of the National Football League season. But I wanted to feature James Cook yet again, especially because of this year's theme of Wuxin, this idea of no-mindedness, this idea of no attachment or no precognition, if you will, towards a certain way of doing, being, and acting, and how that really could be featured and on display in the expression of the way that somebody is solving problems on the field in situ in complex, dynamic, and emergent movement problems. And James Cook, yet again, as we're about to find, just like we did in week one, is displaying and showing what this idea of Wuxin really is about. Again, no mindedness, lack of attachment, this ultra instinct type of mode where there isn't anything getting in the way of his problem solving. He just interacts with the what is in this tightly intertwined, interwoven, interrelated fashion. So let's get into the problem here today. New York Jets. Bills already up 13-0 en route to routing the New York Jets here in New Jersey, East Rutherford, on Sunday. 13-0. James Cook, number four, obviously lined up behind his quarterback, MVP Josh Allen. And on the surface, it's going to look like a few moves and he's off to the races, right? And essentially, that's what it is. And he had a number of big plays, including a couple of touchdowns. But again, let's not miss the forest through the trees, as we often talk about here at Movement Play of the Week in our Football Beyond the Stats deep dives. Like, the one thing that we want to think about is how this really emergent movement problem meets this problem solver or this player who's looking to be attuned and intentional and adaptable around the reorganization of their movement solutions to functionally fit in with the disposition of that problem. And this play right here is going to depict that as we get into it. Of course, you might miss it if we're just looking at higher speeds. And oftentimes we don't want to just look at it at the one speed or at the one angle. And you know, we never do that here at Football Beyond the Stats, right? One more time, all the way through at maximum speed, though, or at real time speed, I should say, rather, as we look at James Cook putting people on his poster for the second week in a row. Let's get into 50% speed because as we think about what it is that James Cook did on this respective play, we want to really try to tell this movement problem solving story there. Can't have my tongue. The best that we can for what it is, right? And again, that what is that dispositional problem, as we know, it's going to be complex, composed of numerous interacting component parts, especially when we're in tighter space. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to feature this respective play today. It's emergent, meaning that it's coming to you based on the confluence of constraints, different based on who's in front of you as your teammates, who's in front of you as the opponents, and how those things are interacting. It's variable, meaning no two problems are ever the same, thus, neither are any two solutions. And we're going to talk about how that might play out practically. And that's, again, one of the reasons why I selected this play over some of the others that I talked about. We think about how this type of play could inform our practice activity design. I find that many people who are doing agility activities for American football players are doing a lot of 1v1 in more open space. One of the things that we do in our learning environment that I'm going to talk a little bit more about when we think about what James Cook is becoming attuned to and adaptable around, what information sources are being relevant to specify his opportunities to act, aka his affordances, how we might be able to set a practice environment that could channel these types of movement problem solving activities or to allow players to repeat the process of solving these types of problems. Traffic navigation in a tunnel is one of the best ways that we can do that because it's going to be running back and defender, running back and teammates, teammates versus defenders, and it's going to change every single time. The what is that which what the player is interacting with. That's why they should be in this state of no-mindedness or Wuxin, right? Let's look at James Cook here. Local problem by local movement problem, right? That's what we talked about last week in week one. If you didn't see that one, I highly implore you to go back and look at that. But we're trying to tell this movement problem solving story for James Cook right here, right now. And you know I'm going to get my telestrator out because that is what I love to do. We can speculate in regards to what it is that he might be looking at and able to pick up, right? His focal vision being more here on this respective interaction, and what types of things are going to specify those affordances for him, right? Let's lay that out, this landscape of opportunities, right? And so as I just kind of paint on the picture here for you, some of the specifying information sources that could potentially be guiding and shaping what James Cook does and how James Cook does it. What and how is something that we want to continue to ask ourselves. Look at this right here. Okay. Again, we think of that vista. There's no need for him to scan here as he did in week one, but instead he's looking as much as he can with this type of width. And again, I talk a lot about Gibson's idea of skilled perception getting wider, longer, and deeper. Where's the width coming from? Obviously, this gap to the left of this interaction and to the right of this interaction. What's longer and deeper? Number 21 here as an opponent who's going to be threatening. We see this 2v2 slice already. If you were here in week one, you can probably pick up on that. Or if you've picked up our new book, Enhancing Skill in American Football, you know we talk a lot about it as well, right? Like looking wider and deeper. It's not just about this immediate local movement problem right now for James Cook. And then, of course, this immediate local movement problem that he is going to utilize and pick up information around and about. He's trying to pick up his teammate versus this respective opponent right in front of him. Let's let this play out a bit. As we do that, I should probably get that crap off the screen, right? And we can see what decision he makes when he makes that decision, right? Again, perceptions, cognitions, actions all flowing into one another, intertwined, interwoven, inseparable from one another. But we can see one is always perceiving while they're acting, always acting while they're perceiving, inseparable. Make some sense? Hopefully it does. If not, stick along for the ride here this season and you're going to hear more and more and more about that. So when he makes this decision and commits to moving through this gap, that is the acceptance of an affordance, aka an opportunity to act. So whatever it was that he saw, and again, we can speculate on that. What is he visually perceiving? There's that interaction. He's reading the leverage of 41 in relation to his teammate. He's reading, perceiving, detecting information about the threat of 21 to guide and channel his acceptance of this affordance to go through this respective gap to the left of this interaction, right? Hopefully that makes some sense. But it better make sense because it's exactly that which we want to expose the player to so they can repeat that process of solving these types of problems. Opponent, teammate, a second opponent who becomes the man that is we are responsible for as an offensive player. But once he's done that in a Wuxin type of fashion, no attachment to what just happened, there's a new what is in front of him, right? What's that new what is look like? New threats. Another local movement problem, right? They are successive, one after the other. These layers of information show us these movement problems as they unfold. How somebody acts channels what they might need to do next, right? And now that threat, that information source, getting out my happy little telestrator here, big time threat about to fill that gap. Now, when he perceives that as he's looking to and through, because I'm assuming he's looking through it until he sees 50 in his periphery to his left, right? I don't know for sure because we don't have eye tracking glasses on number four, James Cook here, but I can assume that he's probably actually looking at what lies out here instead. And the only reason why I'm hypothesizing that, I'm looking at what his head, where his head is pointed, but I'm also thinking about what his intentional aim is right here. What is it? We know what it is. To pick up a first down, first and foremost. But the most skillful players, the most adaptable ones, are typically salivating around scoring, right? They're salivating around breaking a big play. And that's James Cook's MO. That's his movement form of life. So he is thinking about that first and foremost, if there's any thought being there, right? But you can see as the two, the problem and solver, meet one another, these constant changing states of organization or dispositions, right? Solver meets an unfolding, changing problem. Boom. Okay. Now that's a very tight interpersonal distance. You're talking about a yard-ish plus, right? Like a yard and maybe some change, very slight change at that, right? But if James Cook, in fact, I would say that James Cook 2 or 3 years ago would have run right into this. Okay. And I'm only speculating there off of that, which what I've seen before from him. But I think there's a newfound comfort. He just got paid in the offseason. He just got looked at as the guy in Buffalo to go along and accompany his quarterback, all world Josh Allen, right? So that takes off a certain amount of pressure. He doesn't have to try to do too much or to be too much. So he can move at this ownership speed. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on when we talk about how this might play out practically. This is sort of, again, the Le'Veon Bell type of state and frame of mind, right? We don't got to always be on the gas pedal until we know that which what lies ahead is open green grass. And that's the great thing about James Cook here. He is operating in a way that allows him to solve these respective problems when they meet him at the space that he's in. Okay? Or where, when, and where he's in that space. Hopefully that makes some sense. And there's some things here I don't want to miss either. Let me see if I can get back and find it. Sorry about that. I'm kind of battling some allergies here. So if you hear me sniffling, that's exactly why. Okay. But again, we want to investigate the movement actions, but we never investigate the movement actions without thinking about what they are interacting with, the unfolding movement problem. This defender right here, this teammate right there, right? Now it becomes this really tight slice in traffic. I believe that there's some easy things that we can do in order to help facilitate this type of skillful interaction for players so they can repeat this process of solving the problem. But look at the movement actions here. Slower speed, he's ramped down on the gas pedal a little bit, probably operating at 75, 80%-ish, my guess or assumption here. And then that allows him to just functionally adapt that movement solution to meet the needs of the problem. It may seem pretty intuitively obvious, okay? But we think about how most people are training, the learning environment that most people are setting up. You don't get this on cones, okay? I think we all know that is the case. You won't get this adjustability, this functional variability, this adaptability if you were cutting straight at a cone. None of that is relevant at all. So that should be pretty obvious as to why we need to move in context if we ever hope these types of movement strategies to be applied in and across a game situation. I want you to look again, just like we saw in week one when Roquan Smith had James Cook and had his left arm, and James Cook was trying to shed him, if you remember that, and he was perceiving as to what lied beyond. Same thing here as number 50 has his ankle. Look at where he's looking. Now I know he's right behind his teammate, but he's looking at what lies ahead. And what lies ahead is a complex movement problem. A lot of threats. Wrong button, Sean. It's week two, guys and gals. Just bear with me, right? Wrong button. Okay, I feel like I'm back learning how to use this again, right? Complex movement problem, right? Look at this respective 1v3, even though it's sort of like a 1v4, because this cat here on the ground still has James Cook's foot. But he has the wherewithal, the perceptual awareness and connection to the what is in this tightly, this information pickup allows him to tightly couple his movement actions in relation to it. What is that movement action? I'm going to go right behind all of them because it pits these two against this one. Let's not miss the forest through the trees. It's like a finger pointing away to the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger. You'll miss all that heavenly glory. Look at how he drives them all together. Pits those three against one another and comes right in behind 41. Now, it's no longer movement ownership speed. It's no longer tempered down on the gas pedal. Now it's run through those damn gears and hit pay dirt, right? So hopefully some of that we talk about a lot here are threads and themes that are showing themselves on this play that on the surface looks like one or two jukes that are just nasty ones, right? But there's more to that story than that en route to the end zone. Let's see if I can get back a little bit here as we look at some of these cuts. First, that cut, right? Now, this cut, boom. Now, taking the information about that 1v3. Now, get off to the races, but we're not done yet, right? He's going to look straight ahead. Nope. He's going to turn and look over his shoulder a couple of times, get that update, get that connection to the what is that is constantly unfolding. Hopefully, again, some of the themes and threads that we started to pull upon last week in week one with this Wuxin idea with James Cook is showing itself here. And his guy, Josh Allen, is like, I'm not sure what I just witnessed, but I know that I have one of the top running backs in the game. Now, this movement action, this movement strategy right here, this outside foot slashing power cut is one that I didn't feature that much on the other view because we couldn't see how tightly coupled it was. But now we see it at this view, right? Boom. Nasty, nasty stuff, right? This metastable region that James Cook is operating in, again, you could see he's drawing guys in just as he did last week because of the speed that he's operating at. He's able to draw guys into that space, keep them on a string, and put them on a string to put them on his poster. Then he crosses over on them right up out of that power cut, looking on. Look at where the helmet stripe is. So I mentioned before that I thought he might be looking ahead. I'm thinking now, based on where his helmet stripe is, that he's here. But again, out of that periphery, he's probably connecting to some things. We see this guy coming behind him right here. He's going to see that flash of green. We talk a lot about picking up posture and kinematics of opponents. It's not just posture and kinematics, it's colors as well. Now, that wouldn't be something that's talked about that often, but in a representative learning design, one of the easiest things that we can do is get players attuned to other flashes of whatever it might be, colors, space, light, whatever, right? So hopefully that makes some sense there because all of it is going to inform how it is that we might move, right? So he takes that information in early. We see it from this vantage and viewpoint now. Now, remember what I said. Look at where his head is. It's already moving on. We can speculate around it, even though he kind of juked the cameraman out. Let's watch it there in all the heavenly glory, right? Look at where his head goes right away. He's actually that dude, 50, catching his foot and holding him there allowed him to connect to the what is even that much more, I believe. Really cool and special stuff from James Cook. And it's what brings us, or brings him rather, the movement play of the week. And Josh Allen gives him his little props and roses and credit there where credit is due, just like we want to. Now, how do we facilitate this? One of the easiest ways to do it. Let me see if I can fast forward and get to a right spot. Okay. Ball carrier entering a workspace. I said that in Enhancing Skill in American Football, our new book, and if you don't have it yet, pick it up in the show notes below or on this blog post here at Football Beyond the Stats, is we show 48 pages worth of practical activities and how constraints can be manipulated to facilitate types of movement behavior that we find in the bigger slices when it's 11v11 like it would be here. But one of the things that we do in our learning environment is Traffic navigation, and we do a lot of it, a whole heck of a lot of it. And it's an easy thing that can be done in Indy that really isn't done very much. A lot of times we're going, so if he's getting the ball right there at about the 47, we're going to take that maybe to either to the 37 if I would want to stop there, 37, 38, or we might take it about 15 yards. And in this case, we'll take it 15 just for practical intents and purposes. We might go numbers to hashes, okay? Or we might go opposite hash, which we do quite often. Those lines aren't very straight, but you kind of get the deal. Opposite hash, two numbers. We find that this tunnel in the traffic navigation that has to exist within it is some that happens really frequently. This, to me, guys and gals, are representative learning and pastime with relevant slices or snippets of the game that allow players to become attuned and adaptable around what will probably show itself in a game situation. Now we look at how many, like, look at what I just drew in that workspace, right? Hash, two numbers, or even if it's this right here, which we will do that too, okay? That hash to numbers, we can do it both ways, right? Context condition coupling variability, add as much problem variability as we want. More is better than less, at least in my perspective. Let different problems channel in different or differing processes of solving those movement problems, what information they're connecting to, how they might aim to act in that respective way, the decisions that they make, how they adjust and adapt their actions, what movement strategies are employed, right? So we will do this. Now, this is a lot of bodies in the space. We typically do not have this many, if I'm being completely honest. Let me get my stamp out. Let's use stars here, okay? A lot of times I'm going to do, we'll say we'll put one here. We'll put that's a teammate and an opponent, right? We might do a teammate and an opponent like that, and then one free opponent, and that would be this guy, but that doesn't really work, right? So we might add a bunch of different movement obstacles, if we want to think about it like that, right? They are going to be moving. We would start with them passively, or they're just trying to kind of get in the way. They're not going to try to tag off. They're going to allow maybe a little bit more quote unquote sparring. So everyone will be moving at sparring speed or that ownership speed, 70, 75, 80%. 80% max, anything over that. And guys are just adapting and holding on for dear life in most of those cases. So that might be a little aggressive. I wish I could just clear one bit, but I can't. So let me get my star back. So let's just say we're even putting some opponents in that space, right? If we're going to keep that space there, we might put James Cook or an offensive ball carrier, a 1v3, but again, it's a spar. It's ownership speed. These three would be operating passively. So imagine erasing all the Buffalo Bills and the other New York Jets out of the mix, right? I know that's hard to imagine or visualize. Maybe it's not. I hope it isn't. And what we want to do is allow that player, again, remember those players, remember those stars. We want to allow that player to navigate the traffic and navigate the space in that 10-ish by 15-ish workspace. And then he would just get not so much off to the races in the way that James Cook did there. He would just get to the end of the workspace, which in this case is existing right around the, let's call it 34, 33 yard line, right? So we would take him to about here where he would make those guys miss in that respective space. And gradually over time, as guys get more comfortable with that, they become more attuned and more adaptable at solving these types of movement problems, we would make the resistance cranked up. What do I mean by that? Those players that I pointed out would start to behave more actively as opposed to passively. They would continue to spar, but they would spar in their own right, meaning trying to close space, trying to attack the ball carrier, trying to punch at the ball, trying to tag off on him. So now he has to avoid this in this similar way. Again, a lot of times we do 1v3, 1v4, 2v3 quite a bit in that type of workspace, that type of traffic navigation, where there would be a teammate getting in the way of one guy. That back doesn't know exactly the guy that he's getting in the way of, so on and so forth. right? And so that to me, guys and gals, is an easy way for us to set up a learning activity, a problem that players are able to solve in a really comfortable way where they can search and explore the environment for relevant sources of information to couple their movement behaviors to, and they can begin to adjust and adapt their behaviors differently each time. So we have natural repetition without repetition, problem and solution variability here. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to also select this play. One of the easiest entry points of an ecological approach in American football, because this can be for all sorts of ball carriers. Yes, it's most conducive to running backs, right? But it also can be for their counterparts in linebackers, potentially defensive ends, potentially defensive backs, depending on the style and type of player that we have there, right? And we can mix in all types. This could even be a wide receiver who would be in this type of scenario and situation, because this type of slice also happens down near the numbers or well outside near the sticks, right? Or near the sideline. Easy entry point for an ecological approach in American football. And it allows the player themselves to have agency and ownership and not have such a discomfort when they find themselves in traffic. Where one of the coolest things about what we see that allowed this to be possible for James Cook was how slow he moved, how comfortable he was just flowing and adapting like water. It could flow or it could crash. He wasn't overly set on a certain way of doing, being, and acting, often be implored upon by running back coaches and the like, where they're forcing guys to get north and south, just get what you can get. But instead, if we did that and James Cook was attached to that type of solution, he's not scoring in that situation. He's just running to and through number 50 and not actually looking to cut through him. And that's why Josh Allen, rightfully so, is giving him his flowers there. He's giving him everything he deserves. And it's that type of Wuxin state and frame of mind that allowed this to play out on Sunday in week 2 of the National Football League season. So, James Cook, I hope you keep cooking. Stay in this place and space. Continue to adapt, flow like water, and I am excited to see what happens and continues to play out over the next 15 weeks of this National Football League season. I hope you enjoyed this second week of the Movement Play of the Week. If you did, hit a thumbs up, subscribe, pass it on to your people. You guys know the deal. If you haven't picked up the book yet, Enhancing Skill in American Football, we got a ton of learning activities that are like that traffic navigation that would allow you to continue to see things differently on a football field and begin to practice in these types of ways. So no matter the level of mover that you work with, they will start to behave in the Wuxin state of mind, just like James Cook. I will see you guys in week 3.